legislative director. All things seem to be pointing to a government shutdown.
Absolutely. And the fact, and I'm a little jealous that you got to speak to all of those folks today, is they're in busy and spin cycle right now. It looks so much like a shutdown that both sides are going to be very interested in making their case as to why it's the other side's fault that we're going to get a shutdown tonight at midnight. Now, maybe one side will blink between now and midnight, but it sure doesn't look that way. You heard the speaker. You heard Mark Short, the legislative director. They're basically saying that the Democrats are willing to shut down the government to protect illegal immigrants, and that's what the Dreamers are. On the other hand, the Democrats are going to make the argument that Republicans are in control of the House, the Senate, and the White House. There has never been a shutdown when there is unified government, one-party control of Washington until potentially midnight tonight.
So what should that tell us?
Let me just quickly add one last point. It's one of the reasons why I think this shutdown could last for a while, because both sides see it to their political advantage. And if that's the case, until one side gets the message, you're getting blamed for this, this could go on.
What's a while?
Well, the last shutdown lasted 16 days. That's a while.
That's a while. The guidance that our producers are getting on Capitol Hill is that this would last for 2 to 3 days. I don't know about that. But one other piece of information that our producers are giving us on Capitol Hill, while GOPers will not give in on DACA and attach it to the interim spending bill, which we know at this point, he says there is not a DACA plan etched out in legislative text which could pass the Senate right now. Why not?
Because, first of all, it's a tough issue. The Democrats want full protection for the 900,000 Dreamers, which a lot of conservative Republicans consider a form of amnesty. They're willing, some of them, to swallow that, but they want tough border enforcement in return. Things like funding for the border wall, things like an end to chain migration, things like an end to the visa lottery. So, I mean, this is why I know some people are saying 2 or 3 days. I'll take the over on that, on the Vegas line, because it seems to me if the Democrats are firm in saying no DACA, no spending deal, they're not going to get a DACA deal in 2 or 3 days. It's going to take a while.
That's Bill Hemmer chiming in.
But, you know, DACA doesn't expire until March. Why not continue, like Speaker Ryan was making the point here? You continue in good faith negotiations, you cut that deal, you keep the government open until at least mid-February, and you see whether or not you can trust the other side. I think to most Americans, that sounds practical.
I'll give you the Democratic political answer. What they basically feel is you get closer to that March deadline and suddenly the leverage, this is all about leverage, the leverage shifts and suddenly the Democrats are in trouble because if they don't make a deal, then all of the Dreamers lose their protected status on March 5th. But if you make the stand now, then you've got more leverage because you've got all the way from now till March 5th to try to force a deal from the Republicans. They think they have more leverage now to force a DACA deal to their liking than they will as it gets closer to that March 5th deadline.
Another thing, we asked Speaker Ryan about this as well. 72 hours ago, you had that verbal firing squad in the Oval Office, right? You had Lindsey Graham and Dick Durbin on one side, you had the president, everybody else on the other side. He pretty much kicked that to the side, suggesting that that's water under the bridge. That was 3 days ago, which in Washington terms these days can be a year ago. Is it that easy to forget Tuesday and go forward with negotiations, Chris?
Well, I think it's fairly easy for the folks in the room. You know, they're politicians, they understand it. But what happened, particularly with the president's S-hole remarks a week ago last Thursday, is that I think it's hardened the Democratic base. There were a lot of people in the left wing of the Democratic Party, the immigration advocates, who didn't want to make a deal with the president anyway. But after those remarks, I'm not saying it's totally his fault. Part of the problem, I think, here is that both sides think it's to their political advantage or at least to the disadvantage of the opposite side. But I think that hardened the feeling among people in the left-wing base who really don't want to make a deal with this president now. and are less willing to make concessions when it comes to the wall and chain migration and the visa lottery. That's why, this is the problem, I think. If they agreed to, and I think this is the one possibility, a 4 or 5 day extension, keep everybody in town, and let's work and try and solve this problem.
Right.
But if you don't get that, then I don't know how you get off a shutdown. Once you've shut down the government, somebody's going to have to back down, and I don't see either side backing down quickly.
We're looking at the live briefing room right now. That's a live shot inside. We're waiting for Mick Mulvaney and Mark Short to step up and explain just what is going on and the perspective of the White House at this moment. But, Chris, I feel like pointing out the obvious here, and that's that the American people must be frustrated watching this debate and argument back and forth, finger pointing, blame game in Washington. People are going to work every day trying to feed their families and send them to school, and they see Washington and these elected officials not being able to come to an agreement and do their job.
Absolutely, Sandra. And look, what could be more basic as a function of the government than to keep funding the government, just to keep it in operation, keep the paychecks going to employees so they can do their jobs, whether it's in the Parks Department or the IRS or Social Security or all of the various departments. And look, this White House, as opposed to the Obama White House, is not going to try to weaponize this. They're going to try to keep going as much as they can. But you have 800, and that's how many it'll be, 800,000 government employees on furlough on Monday morning. It's going to have an impact on real people's lives. So, sure, people are frustrated. It's one of the reasons this president has a historically low approval rating at the end of his first year in office. It's why Congress has a historically low approval rating. People are very fed up with what is happening, or in this case, what isn't happening or getting done in Washington.
Yeah, Chris, what do you